John, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear Dave talk? Dave, could you do a test talk?
I'm just gonna come over.
Oh, okay, you're gonna come over here. Okay. I don't have a.
I
video
heard him
camera
say,
just
I'm going to
because,
come over there.
No.
Well, maybe I should have been studying for my ham license with you.
It's pretty, I've had mine for over 10 years. I had to renew it not that long ago. But it's yeah, there's some interesting stuff during it. I mean, some of the questions on there are like,
Hello, everyone. This is the June 2022 OLUG meeting. I don't have a lot of announcements. I do have a schedule for the next few months. On July 5th, one of my friends from the maker group will be doing Proxmox. August 2nd is open, and just by the way, I will not be in town on August 2nd. On September 6th, I'm going to do Zabbix Enterprise Monitoring, and October and November are still open. So I hope everyone is hearing that. And I'm going to turn this over to Ben.
All right. Can I make a point for you, something for you to do, Dave?
Hello, everybody. Just a quick sound check. Can you hear me out there?
I can. Yes.
All right, great.
can't see anything though.
When Dave is,
Yep.
when
I'm getting
Dave
ready to
returns
share.
to his laptop, he needs to turn on the option to let other people share their screens.
Dave, somebody's gonna have to make me a host so I can share my screen.
Click on share screen and there should be like an advanced or something down near the bottom. I forgot to turn that on before I turned it over.
John, do you think you can help out with that?
If Dave makes me host again, just right click on my name in the participants list and say make host. Make haste, make host.
I don't see a button for that.
It's down here on the bottom, right?
Just-
Participants. and
Yeah,
then
click on participants.
right-click.
Yep.
I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, I don't.
Just right click on my name and go down through the list and say make host.
Oh, there we go.
Aha.
Okay, now you can.
Oh, yeah, I can share. We'll do desktop one. Share. All right, so that goes there. I don't think I need that. I think I can minimize this down a little bit here. Yeah. All right, let's go to move this out of the way. How do I make this bigly? Start the slideshow. Okay. I'm assuming everybody can hear, and let's move on. So today, I'm the Ansible guy, so I just talk about all Ansible things. But it's a good way to fill a slot, right, for a meeting. So
Yes.
Today I'm going to talk about Ansible Navigator and Ansible execution environments. What are they? Why would you want to use them? Those kind of things. So without further ado, this is kind of what we're going to talk about. Recycle the first two slides about me and the little elevator speech, and then we'll get into like kind of doing real stuff and talk about the problems that these products solve and how you use them. and who knows, maybe they'll make your life better. So recycle the slide. I presented here, I think, twice before. So out of UNO. I currently work at Kiewit. I think I just made 4 years. And a big part of my day is Jenkins and Ansible and all things automation, GUI automation and things like that. So I've really latched onto Ansible the last, I don't know, 8 years, because I haven't found anything I can't do with it yet, but there's probably some things I shouldn't do with it. So, you know, a little elevator speech about what it is for those who don't know. I think everybody who's been here has heard this before, but written by Michael DeHaan. He used to work for Puppet Labs, I believe. So learned some lessons there. Thought he could do it a better way. Came up with this agentless design, wrote it in Python because, you know, Python's already on most Linux systems. And so you can kind of think of Ansible as kind of a declarative state configuration management if you want. You can also think of it as a means of orchestration. You can also think of it as like SSH on steroids. The thing I like about it is you get the scaling kind of for free. So yeah, we've had previous talks. It's certainly advanced a lot in the last, you know, 8-9 years I've been using it. Red Hat bought it. Of course, Big Blue just bought Red Hat. So is that purple Fedora now? I don't know what that is, but it's gotten more complicated. And hopefully this talk today can help you package it and use it in a way that's less complicated, at least for end users and other things like that. Okay, so we'll get into the meat of it. So now using Ansible to do real stuff. The motto historically has always been, you know, batteries included and radically simple IT automation. And in my experience, that is still true. It's true until they aren't. If you're using Ansible to do, you know, from a Linux machine, manage remote other Linux machines out of the box, which is kind of how it was originally designed, it is absolutely true. You can totally use a package manager or pip or any means to just install whatever latest version of Ansible there is, and you can start cranking out playbooks and running them, and you will have success. But as I mentioned before and in previous talks, Ansible's gotten much bigger and can do a lot more things. And because of that, there's just more underlying complexity to it. So you can now manage Windows. You can manage all manner of networking gear, you know, Juniper, Cisco. You can manage clouds, Google, Azure, AWS, all your favorites. There's just, you know, it seems like there's no end to the amount of new stuff coming in. And because of that, the batteries included is kind of a half truth right now. All of the stuff that Ansible provides, those batteries are included when you install it by default. So all the Python code and the modules that Ansible used to do those things, those are included, but a lot of those things depend on other batteries, other things. So for example, if you want to manage Windows with Ansible, you have to install some Python modules. Notably, PyWinRM is one big one, or there's another newer one called PyPSRP. Yeah, you'll need those things. Those are not included in the Ansible install and probably never will be. Likewise, if you want to manage clouds, if you want to manage VMware, you need PyVMami is another Python library you'll need, or Boto 3 was the old one for AWS. And for Azure, there is a crap ton of extra Python modules you need that Microsoft provides, but these things are not bundled in with the Ansible install. And I understand why, because Ansible, they don't write those, right? They leverage them, but it's up to you to go get them and install them. Likewise, there might be binary packages and things you need on your machine to do Ansible things. For example, coming in from a Linux box trying to manage Active Directory, you're probably going to need some Kerberos packages and a Kerberos configuration to manage those things. Need some GSAPI packages, all these other things. So to use it to do, like I said, real stuff, to broaden your horizon and use the same mentality that you did for Linux for years and now branch out to clouds and Windows and other things, you just need a little bit, you need to bring some more batteries along, is all I'm trying to say. And so this gets into your classic, developers would always say dependency hell. And it kind of is it is kind of an issue. You have to keep track of things, the Python modules and libraries that you need, any OS packages you need. Then there's the Ansible content itself. Are you using somebody else's role from Ansible Galaxy? Ansible has its own internal, I don't want to call it a package manager, but maybe a content manager, very analogous to apt or Yum, or Node.js has NPM. They have something called Ansible Galaxy. It's a tool that you can install other people's content if you want to leverage their roles or playbooks or things. You have config files, you have secrets, and all these things galore. So when presented with this, and knowing I had to train other people to use it and get them to use it, I thought to myself, how am I going to get these guys to install this and have all these things that they need, the right versions of them, make sure they're installed, regardless if they're running Ansible from Red Hat, Fedora or RHEL, or if they're running it from Debian or Ubuntu. Well, everything in Ansible is a playbook. So I wrote a playbook that does it. So basically, the workflow at the time was pip install Ansible, whatever the current version is, clone my playbook down from a Git repo, run the Ansible Galaxy command to install the requirements, and then run my playbook. And it would set you up a complete Python virtual environment with all the Python libraries. It would install all the OS packages you needed. It would template out all the vault secrets and set up configs and all that stuff. And that's largely how I've been using it for a long time. And I know it works because I've got interns coming in and they just run this playbook and it works on WSL on Windows. It's worked on my AWX or Tower. I've set up custom virtual environments that way. It's worked for a long time. But, is there a better way, I guess? What about disconnected and air gap type environments, right? So all these things, right? Packages, Python libraries, other things. If you're air gapped, right? If you're doing this work in like an unclassified environment, you go, to a classified environment, you got to move all that crap with you, right? So we always called it, remotely syncing parts of the internet. So back when I worked at Stratcom, we did this. We would write all this code, all these playbooks on the unclassified environment. We built up mechanisms to cache things, to proxy them, to serve them up in kind of a more native tooling format. And we would periodically burn them to hard drives and bring them up to the other environment. And we had all the same tools up there that could unpack them. And it was just a lot. It's a lot of machinery and stuff to put into place to do something that seems so simple. So maybe there is a better way. And yes, there is. And I put an asterisk. It really depends on how you feel about containers, right? Because, those are the new hotness. And how else are you going to package all these things up into a single item and like take it with you somewhere? And then also be able to like run it, right? So in the old way with Python virtual environments and using my playbook to do stuff, things could still drift, right? Environment variables could get changed, or if people ran a playbook on a certain day, if I didn't version lock all the things, at that time, they would get a new version of something. Whereas when I ran it 6 months ago, I had a different version. So even with my playbook mentality, things still drifted a little bit. So what if I could package all this into one thing you could bring with you? And so, the solution is a container type mechanism, right? A container is really just a zipped up tarball, right? That's all it really is in the end. So that's what Ansible execution environments are. Exactly. They are containers. So how do you build an execution environment? How do you build one of these things? Well, if you're on the building side, so this would be, the person doing this work would be a little bit more sophisticated, maybe advanced, would know all these dependencies, and would go read about Ansible Builder and these things. But essentially, you're going to need a container runtime, right? So you're going to need Podman or Docker on your system. There's this tool called Ansible Builder. And then obviously you're going to have to be on the internet to pull down these things that you need. And so what I'm going to do now is I'll switch over and show you kind of what that looks like a little bit. I'm not going to actually run it because you'll see it takes quite some time to run. So to begin with, okay. So here's kind of a directory layout. Ansible Builder is something you can install from pip, probably from PyPy with pip. I don't know if any of the big distro vendors actually have a pre-built package for it yet. So I don't know, your mileage might vary. You can try using apt on Ubuntu Debian or Yum or DNF to see if you can install Ansible Builder is the name of it. But typically what I do is I would use Python's pip and pip install Ansible Builder, and you're off to the races there. This is a very kind of simplistic directory layout. Let's just kind of go over it. It all starts with this configuration file. It's a YAML file. And this is where you tell Ansible Builder what you want to build and how you want it built. So starting at the top, there's some pre-built images out there that you have to start from somewhere, right? With a container, you got to start from something. So the community has provided some base images. There's actually two images at play. There's a base image that you're going to lay down all your stuff on top of. And there's another image called the builder image that has some more tooling in it to help do this process. So I actually built my own custom ones because I had to, for hashtag reasons that are boring, but you can use these. Quay.io is Red Hat's version of Docker Hub. So you can use their pre-built images and it'll work just fine. By the way, these are all Red Hat 8 under the hood right now, okay? Or either RHEL 8 or CentOS Stream. I don't know, can't remember. But they're Enterprise Linux 8 based. So you're gonna tell it, I think this is even optional, this entire thing. If you don't specify this, it'll just use the stuff that's on Quay.io. Now you're gonna tell, okay, where's the configuration file that you want to use to configure how your Ansible and stuff will run? And that's just in the current directory. So this is my configuration file that we use at Kiewit all the time. Where are the collections at? Where are the roles? If you know anything about this, you'll know there's about 1 billion options you can specify in here, but this is your config file that you would use day to day normally. So where is it? It's in the current directory. Okay, now all those dependencies I was talking about, right? The dependency hell. Where are those? Like, where's your list of them? So the very first one here is Galaxy. So do you depend on any content hosted on galaxy.ansible.com, the public one? Do you have any of your own private roles or collections or the new things that are kind of taken over? So you would list those out in a text file that looks like this. If you've ever done, man, I keep wanting to use a mouse, but if you've ever done Ansible Galaxy install before, this file format will look very familiar. At the top, you have the collections. This is a list, and you can specify the name of the collection, and you can, I highly recommend you pin the version, so that way if you ever rebuilt this, you can control explicitly all the versions of all the things that you want. So that way, if you rebuild it 6 months from now, it won't rebuild it with up-to-date stuff and potentially be different. So up top, you can specify collections that you want. These are all coming, in this example, these are all coming from the internet, from galaxy.ansible.com. And down below, I have an example I've commented out for brevity. This is a custom collection that I wrote for Kiewit. And you can see I'm telling it, it'll be in a tar GZ file that would be local on the box. So I would just dump that file here in the directory and it would pull that in. And then even below the collections are most people got their start with Ansible and Ansible Galaxy installing roles, right? So you can also install roles into your custom execution environment. Any roles that you wrote yourself. So in this example, I'm pulling them down from a Git repo. These are all rows that I wrote, but I could equally pull them down from galaxy.ansible.com or somebody else's private stuff. So let's go back to here. So that's all kind of like, that's all custom content that you want to package into your thing. Now let's talk about Python. So you might have extra Python stuff you need for your, remember I talked about PyWinRM earlier, PyVMami. So this is for VMware, this is for Windows, some Kerberos libraries because I want to do Active Directory things and things like that. Whatever you need. So you can put these in here. If I was a good boy, and I wasn't, I would have used the double equals and pinned them to a version in time, but I didn't because I'm lazy. And finally, there are binary dependencies. Remember, I talked about OS packages before. Me personally, when we do VMware, we use Cloud Init to make all of our Linux machines. And to facilitate that, we upload a CD-ROM, and to build that CD-ROM into VMware, we need GenISO image. It's a package we need. So I built that in, some Kerberos packages, some LDAP packages, things like that. So let's go back here. So we've told it potentially the base images. Again, I think this is optional. Where's our config file? What are our dependencies? And then finally, if you have more specific stuff you want, it will run these arbitrary, if you know, kind of like a Docker file format, it will run these things for you as part of the build process. So in this case, I needed PowerShell on Linux. I wanted my execution environment to have PowerShell natively in it. I know it's gross talking about PowerShell on Linux, but I needed it, okay? So there's reasons. So I install that there. I need the Azure CLI. That's another tool that I need to manage Azure. I needed to configure some config files so that when this container runs, it can do hostname resolution in our environment. It can do Kerberos kind of stuff. And then I even went so far as to copy. Now I'm gonna say danger, Will Robinson here, because I'm copying in all of my secrets, my vault secrets that allow me to decrypt things. I'm copying those in to facilitate ease of use for the end user experience. Anybody who pulls down this container can run it and get into it, and they could look those up. Okay, so you'd want to just be careful if you're distributing your execution environment around, that you give it to people you trust, and they would already know those things anyway. Okay, so with all this in place, and really, as you can see, it's not that much. These additional build steps are completely optional. Honestly, it's feed it these three things, tell it what it depends on, and the command line is quite literally that Ansible builder build. You can tell it the container runtime. I think it will try to guess what you have installed. If you have Docker, it'll use Docker. If it detects you have Podman, it'll use Podman. I was explicit on the command line. I said, hey, do that. -T, how do I want to tag it when it's done? And then I passed in the verbosity so I could see more output. So above, as I scroll up, this is all going on, right? All this stuff is happening in the background. It's pulling down these build images, these base images. It's running a bunch of Galaxy commands to install stuff in there. It's running your custom Docker commands that you wanted. This run took like 40 minutes, right? I did it at home before I got here. As you can see, I said podman image.ls. I'll run that again just so you. So when I ran this, that was 22 minutes ago. I'll do a podman image.ls again. Oop. And so, yeah, that was about 2 hours ago before this meeting. So the resulting container is kind of a fat boy, right? It's 4.3 gigs. And that was just me stripping a bunch of stuff out because I was going to run this like during the presentation, but didn't want to like have people watch this thing go forever. So The one I normally build in production, well, actually, you know what? It's gone on a diet. The first one I ever built was 6 gigs. I think I've optimized some stuff. I'm down to about 3.5. I've got another couple of versions that I'll show when we do Navigator here shortly. So this was the command line, Ansible builder build, and it builds this image. And so now you locally have it. So if you use Podman or Docker, you can see, you know, you have it, whatever you tagged it, there it is. I put the OLUG name on the tag, latest version. And now that you have it, you could publish it somewhere, right? You could upload it to Docker Hub or Quay.io, or in my case, because I don't share this with, you know, the publics, oh boy. We have a private container registry out in Azure. You know, it would have been nice if you'd have taken me right to it, because I was there earlier. There we go. So once you have the image built, you can log into your favorite registry. I'm just going to demonstrate here for completeness. Here's that keyword EE all, and you can push it, and the registry will happily, you know, keep track of the versions as you tag them. Locally on my laptop, I've got version 2.00. When we get into the Navigator, I'll show you, you know, how cool this is. So imagine you could build this execution environment. You could have a scheduled thing that builds it once a week or whatever, and automatically tags it. And that way, once you have it built, because it's a container, and because of the magic of, you know, the unicorn magic of the layering and things that happens, when you push it up, it's usually going to reuse layers. So you're not constantly pushing that 5 gig or 4 gig. It's reusing and recycling layers as it stores it up in the registry. Likewise, as you pull them down, it's only going to pull down the deltas that you need. But you can start to build these versions, and now that you have these, you have point in times where you could always go back and say, well, it worked on this version, so I'm gonna leverage that one. And then you always have typically you always have a pointer to the latest build, which is this one or the latest numbered one. To show you a little bit further, I use Jenkins. So this is the last time I built it. I built it on May 20th. I just version controlled some internal content. And you can see it took 54 minutes for it to run. And so my Jenkins pipeline, when I build it, not only does it build it, it also pushes it up to that registry for me. So that's kind of like what goes into building this thing called an execution environment. This thing that is the one thing, the one true thing you could totally burn to a CD-ROM using Docker export or Podman export, and you could bring it over this air-gapped environment. And inside it, it would have all the stuff you need. And you could then import it to, again, another container runtime, and you could actually run it. It's a runnable thing, okay? So now the question is, how do you run it? And that's where Ansible Navigator and some other things come into play. So let's get to that. Okay. So Ansible Navigator. So you built this cool container, and how to use it. Currently, there are 2 common ways. I started going down this path because I know that the previous I did talks about AWX and Tower, right? That web-based GUI with scheduling and all that other stuff. New versions, old versions use the Python virtual environment technique that I had a playbook that could do. Newer versions directly support these execution environments. So you can tell your tower, here's my container registry. There's all these versions of execution environments, and you can tell it for a single job template. I want you to use this execution environment to run this job template. I want you to use this one to run this template. By default, use this version over here, right? And so you can completely control and tune which execution environment you want to use to run certain content. Oh, and the other reason it's important is this thing called Ansible Navigator. So this is something that the human would use on the command line. And the reason why this is all important is because now whether you're on the command line, I have a young intern, I'm a seasoned guy on the command line, or I have this in AWX and Tower, we're all using the exact same environment with all the same dependencies to run the same content. So there's no more, well, it works on my machine. You literally have the same machine, right? This execution environment is the machine, and I've just given it to you in one command. So, that's where execution environments are coming into play with modern versions of Tower. It's not even called Tower anymore. I can't remember. Every time you buy something, you got to rebrand it. So
Ansible automation platform.
they have automation platform, which is composed of Tower is now called the automation controller. And then the platform also includes Automation Hub, which is Galaxy, right? The content provider. So that could be another talk. You can do on-prem your own Galaxy if you want. I've got one. I can show you how. Okay, let's do some actual Navigator stuff. So Navigator itself is different than anybody who's historically used the Ansible playbook command. So typically I use virtual environments, right? I love Python virtual environments. So the way I would install Navigator right out of the hop, I would just say virtual env, and I'm going to call this venv OLUG nav demo. So this says, oh, I created you a Python virtual environment there, and now I need to activate it. So just so you know, there's no, I can type Ansible Navigator right now. And not found, right? So I'm going to source, what do I call it? OLUG. So I'm going to turn that on and say pip install Ansible Navigator. And so this should go out to pypy.org, get all the things, install it into your virtual environment. Again, why are virtual environments awesome? Because they don't muck with your system Python, right? Your system Python is more important than most people understand, right? Yum was written in Python, and lots of things are written in Python, and it's a good glue language. You don't want to mess it up if you can help it. So virtual environments allow you to leave that pristine, have your own virtual environment, do whatever you want, and then you can activate it, deactivate it. So now if I run the Ansible Navigator command, stuff happens. So you can see by default with this fresh install, because I have no config file that's determining how Navigator is to run. By default, it's going out and it's going to pull down this demonstration execution environment for you. So, the speed here isn't the greatest, but we might let that go in the background and switch over to another one I've already got bacon. Maybe it was this first one. Yeah, I think so. So how do you influence so you got this new thing installed, Ansible Navigator. How do you influence how it works? Well, there's a config file. And as you can probably imagine, it's probably YAML. And if you guess that, you'd be right. Here's another VS Code window. So again, I'm just going to show these same OLUG things I made for before. Playbook. Here's the Ansible Navigator config file. So it's YAML. There's lots of options available. I think a lot of them are optional. I found a config file example out there that seemed to have all the things, and I pasted it all and I commented out the stuff I didn't want and changed things that I thought needed changing. Yeah, you're free to dabble. I don't know what all the default values are. I think most of the values I have in here are the defaults. So we can go to the top. What's the config file we should use for your Ansible config when using Navigator? Because obviously you could swap them in if you wanted different config files. Timeout is important. Okay. unlike Ansible Playbook, which runs, that's the actual Ansible binary that runs ad hoc commands and playbooks, you have methods to influence how it times out. Navigator has its own kind of built-in timeout. So even if your playbook is happily running in the background in that container, waiting for something to happen, Navigator will disconnect from that thing. So I just set this to some arbitrary big number, 2 hours. I've never had a playbook really go over that. Just something to be aware of. You can influence how it's colorized. When we get into it and I launch it, you'll see this thing called the TUI, the text user interface. So this is all command line driven, but you get a cool presentation layer that you'll see. So you can, coloring, as you're using it, you can actually pop open an editor. You can say like edit this file and it'll pop open your, so I'm gonna use Vim, right, as my editor here. Here's where you specify, okay, what execution environment should I use when I launch Navigator? So you can tell it, I'm telling it, hey, I'm using Podman. Yes, I do want to use an execution environment. And now, as you distribute this config file around, you can help control what version of the EEU built that they should be using to run their stuff. And then you can even tell it with this pull policy, hey, go out there and check. If, for example, rather than forcing this to version 2, I could just say latest, right? And then every time I launched Ansible Navigator, it would go out to the repo, see if there's a latest, compare it to your local. Are they the same? Okay, I'll go on. If not, it'll pull that down over the top of what's there and use that. So you can use the tag policy. It'll check for this tag at the end, like latest or a specific version. You can tell it never to pull. You could manually just use Podman or something to pull it down. Or if it's just missing locally, if it's not there, it'll go grab it. You can do volume mounts, other container-y options. Some other things that I think that are interesting are logging the output. You can do this replay file and this other log file. I think this would be awesome to have on a network share and come up with username, date, something.json logs out. And when I show you this replay option, it'll become really clear, like somebody ran into a problem, I could quickly use Navigator to go see where it went awry. So let's get into actually kind of using this thing a little bit. So now I'm just going to run Ansible Navigator now. Maybe. Hopefully. Let's see what's going on here. This is still doing stuff. Okay. So this one, I think the reason why it took so long is it went and it used that, it was checking for the tag to see if I had that tag. So that took, the internet here is not the fastest I've noticed, but I could be spoiled. So here's this text-based user interface I was talking about, right? You have these numbers on the left, which are, you can actually enter that number. So let's say I wanted to look at images available to use. So I can press 8. No, this one is not navigable by numbers. That'll come up later. But kind of think of like VI, right? You type colon and then your command, like WQ or something. So let's say I want to look at the images, colon images. So now Navigator is looking in my container runtime environment. And it's like, hey, you have all these images. And oh, I've introspected them and I know some of these are execution environments and some of them aren't, right? This Hello World one is not an execution environment. It's just an image from Docker Hub. Same thing with Nginx, but it knows that these ones in green, it knows that those are execution environments and it knows to use this version 2.0 because I specified it in my config file. I said, I want you to use this one. And you can actually, I think, if I press 6, I can get more information about the particular image. So I can press 0 and get some details on how it was built, when it was built, a bunch of stuff from Red Hat. You can hit escape to go back. Let's get some general information.
What command is it running like there?
So, so again, Navigator in the background is doing introspection of the image. So it's probably doing a combination of Podman or Docker commands to get into the image, pull out some data out of it and present it to you in this way. So
Another like gigabyte sized images, right?
yeah, sure. Mhm, mhm. So this is just general info. I think the more apt one that I always look at is the collections and versions. So these are all things that I specified when I built my execution environment config file. When I built it, I want these versions of these things, right? So here's all my Ansible content, the collections that I specified, and then Python packages. I can look here and I can see all the versions of Python packages that are installed, which is kind of nice. Operating system packages, I can see all that stuff too. Okay, so that's kind of like launching it for the first time. This is called the welcome mode. Okay, they have other modes of display, and that was kind of looking through images that are available. So now let's look at. We can look at the configuration. So this is going to do a delta of an out-of-the-box Ansible config file that is in that Ansible would use. And then it's going to give you the delta of the config file that's in that EE, and it's going to highlight them in yellow. So here's all the things that change, right? Like by default, Ansible says no cows is false. I set that to true because, okay, the cows queue to look at the first couple times, but when I want to do real work, I don't look at the cow. So it highlights all the things that I've customized in our Ansible config in yellow. And so you can see what the default value was and what the customized one is, and all that good stuff, which is helpful to know. Let's go look at the other way of running it. I think I have a history here. Oh yeah. So I'm going to run. I'm going to run this command. So if you're familiar with the Ansible playbook command, you can basically pipe in all the same things into Navigator. The only exception is rather than saying Ansible playbook, you say Ansible Navigator, and then you do this run. And then from here on out, pretty much everything else is the same. You can run one or more plays. You can chain together one or more inventory files. You can pass variables in. The other delta here is this -M, the mode Navigator is going to run in. In this case, I'm going to run in this alternative mode, not the TUI. We're going to run in the standard out mode. So I'm just going to run it. And for those of you who've ever run a playbook before, the output here should look extremely familiar. When it gets done thinking about it. So again, this is a playbook I ran last time I was here, or something else before, but you can see it's doing stuff. The output looks very familiar, Ansible output. Ran a bunch of things against a bunch of fake machines. Some things changed, some things were already okay. What's the shell? Points are made up, and it's all made up. The points don't matter. Whose line, right? So this playbook is the whose line playbook, right? The tasks don't matter, and nothing matters here. I'm just showing the output. Now I'm going to run the same command, but we're going to look at that text-based user interface, which is different. So I just took off the standard out, and so now you can see it's doing the exact same thing. You get this little indication down here in the right corner that it's running. You'll start to see some progress up here. It'll show all the different plays. So I only had one play here, but you'll see there's 10 tasks in progress, and then you'll keep seeing them go in progress and okay and changed. And eventually you'll see at the bottom here, it'll say successful, or it'll say failed. You can, this play, you'll see it was complete, or if it failed, you would see multiple plays here. If there were multiple plays, this one had one, but we can drill into this play now. Oh, okay. So in the other way, it was on the command line. And in some cases, you better hope you got a big buffer, because you might be scrolling for a while to go look at where that failure was. This is where the TUI is really awesome. So I'm going to press 0 to kind of drill in one layer. And so now I can scroll kind of infinitum, right? And I can see all the different tasks, what kind of task it was, the action, right? We're doing fact gathering here, we're doing some debugging here, whether or not it changed, how long it took to run that task, which host was involved. But I can drill in even further. Let's say I want to look at task number 13, colon 13. There we go. I can see that this task was applied to this host. This is the name of it, when it started, when it stopped, what its result was, yada, yada, yada. These are obviously more meaningful as you're doing real things as opposed to just debug stuff, but for time.
So is the drill down probably the equivalent of the old triple V when you're running Ansible playbook?
Perhaps. So verbosity is a little bit different. It's going to provide, I guess when you're drilling to this level, this would be like, yeah, a 2 or 3 V's on this screen right here. But you can still pass. Ooh, that's a good question. Let's just see what happens when we do when we increase the verbosity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V's is for debugging Windows connections, by the way. So we'll just do 4. This is the most verbose. I don't think it's going to change this very much, but it might change some of the stuff we see in the drill down. We'll see.
Okay.
So this shouldn't take long.
Is this running on your laptop?
Yeah. Yep, laptop. And all the hosts in that inventory are just local hosts. It's just pointing back to itself. I did this in a previous talk, I think, and we can review that inventory if you want. So let's go look at 0. Let's drill in. I don't see any verbosity here. Let's look at the same one, 13. I think we looked at before. No, I guess I really don't see much extra verbosity here.
Okay.
Now, this version of Ansible Navigator I'm using is like 1.0. I think I just saw before I got here, they came out with the new one 5 days ago. It's like 1.3 or something. So this is still kind of a new kid on the block. I'm excited to see what they're doing with it. It works natively in any kind of POSIX environment. So Whizzle on Windows, it works. My buddies at work use it. It's freaking awesome. And plus I control all the stuff that goes into that EE. So I know where they're coming from and whenever they have a problem. Here's one of the other coolest things I like about Navigator. So let's say, remember I talked earlier about the Navigator config, about the log output, and wouldn't it be cool to put that on an NFS share somewhere? Check this out. I can say, I'm just going to launch Ansible Navigator again. But I can say replay, and this will replay this will show me the output of the last thing that was run in that log file, right? So imagine your colleague runs into a problem, you say replay a path to that, theoretically NFS mounted log file, you run that replay and you can go browse through their stuff and start to, look up and down, hey, where did it go wrong, right? Maybe it's this task number 8 or something had an issue. I can drill in and see all the stuff. And unlike before, when you're chasing, triple or quad V's on the buffer, this will scroll on. I mean, that JSON file can get as big as you want it, right? And you can happily scroll on and on. So it's pretty cool. What else with Navigator? So we talked about the run, we talked about replay. You can look at the log itself. So the log is just for Navigator itself. Like if you were having problems with it, I think this will pull it up in a, just as successful there. I don't know. Review the current application. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I don't have any problems. I'll look in the output here in a minute. One thing I will say that I do not like about the TUI is the following. So when you do it like this on the command line, right? Ansible Navigator run, you get my favorite bashism, right? Tab autocomplete for paths and stuff. Awesome. You do it in the TUI, you can launch it from here. You can say run. You can say run. It's going to ask you, okay, where's that? Man, I'm sitting here. I don't know. Is it workspace, key width, Ansible, tab? Oh, no tab. So that's kind of a bummer, right? So that's why I've just got my guys coached up to just launch it from the command line, right? And then if you want regular standard out, you can do the -M standard out there. If you want the TUI, you can do it there. But what I've just shown is using the custom EE that I built earlier that has the environment with all the dependencies in it to include content and other things. I'm using Navigator on the command to use that to run a local playbook. And my run here would be identical to anybody else's run who used the same EE with the same playbook. It would be identical. I mean, short of network hiccups, right? That you couldn't connect to this remote server or something like that, save that kind of stuff. We've eliminated almost all of the variables. So that's kind of, I think that's kind of the show. And I hope it's somewhat evident as to why it's kind of important. So in my opinion, moving forward, this is the new hotness, right? I kind of understand, I understand why they made it. Back in the day, batteries were truly all included. All the modules and content, a lot of the stuff was included back in Ansible. They've changed that. I talked earlier in a previous talk or the talk before about collections and how they kind of moved a bunch of that stuff out of the core because they wanted the people who maintain the Windows collection or the Azure collection to be able to maintain that outside of core, version it at their own pace, and be able to bring it back in. So they went through that refactoring to help and to make Red Hat's life easier. They don't want to be the ones managing Azure modules and all that others. That's not their thing, right? Well, Navigator EEs are just another way. It's more of that branching. I don't want to, deliver all the Python libraries you need and all this other stuff. I want you to be able to have control over that. So it allows them to focus more just on the core element, and then you, the person who knows what the playbooks do, what they're communicating with, you can build that EE to your spec and manage it yourself. And so I like this part the best. The works or broke on my machine problem. That shouldn't be a problem, really. In my experience working with my guys at work, I work off of Ubuntu all day. They work off of WSL. Whenever we've had a problem with the playbook, it's been reproducible on both sides, right? So there are some gotchas though. I work in a different VLAN than they do. They're subject to certificate inspection. I'm not. That's a whole nother issue. That's a certificate issue, right? That's not something we're here to solve. And the other cool thing I like about it is you can keep building these EEs. You can have a library of them. You can version them, and you can always roll back and forth when things break or they were a known good state at some date. I also think the TUI is actually pretty cool, especially for reviewing what went wrong and things like that. Here's some more info, right? Obviously, you can go to the true source, the GitHubs, Ansible Navigator project. There's the Ansible Builder project. There is an Ansible Discord server. It sees quite a bit of traffic, actually. The more traffic is on IRC, and there's a more modern matrix bridge to that IRC with some other channels that are not in IRC. I think the matrix route, I use the chat tool called Element as my matrix client. It's awesome. It's a distributed Slack or whatever you want to call it, but you can have history and you can do actual like code snippets. And I'm an old IRC guy as well, but it is nice to be able to copy paste code snippets and things like that. And then there's actual some docs on Builder and Navigator respectively on Read the Docs that will walk you through the config files and all that other stuff. So if you're not using it now, I think at some point you will be by choice or not. Like I said, new versions of Tower / AWX / controller, they're already going down this container route anyway. Those products are delivered themselves as containers, and they really want you to run it on Kubernetes, as I've alluded to in previous talks. this is just another one. The EEs are just more containers. So yeah, I think you're going to be kind of going down this road regardless, if you're going to continue using this product going forward. That's about my talk. Are there any questions? I'll turn my speaker back on so I can hear the web audience. If there's any questions locally or remotely, I'm here to field them.
I have one chat from Bruce, and he said, is this paid for or free open software?
It's all FOSS. So I personally use all the FOSS stuff.
Except the Azure.
Except for Azure, right? Yeah, of course. So Kiewit is primarily a Windows shop, I would say. All their custom dev is in .NET. It's all Windows, Microsoft. We're in Azure, obviously, that's the Microsoft cloud. But me, as an Ansible guy, I've come up through using the open source upstream version of everything from Ansible itself, right? The package that gives you the Ansible and Ansible playbook commands, all the way up through AWX and Galaxy, on-prem Galaxy NG, and now Navigator and EEs. I use all the upstream upstream open source stuff. Yeah, you got to support it yourself though, right? That's not easy. I think that's why Kiewit has me around, because I am their support for it. Obviously, if you go with, you can buy it from Red Hat, you can buy the support and they will happily support you. You'll be further behind though, right? They're always a little further back. Being on the bleeding edge is dangerous though. So, yep, but I use all the free stuff.
Okay. Side question, are you planning to move to Rocky Linux or stay with CentOS Spring?
Good question. I just implemented Rocky 8.5 as a supported OS that we use Ansible to provision all of our virtual machines with. So I've got experience with Rocky, both container images, doing all my molecule testing and stuff like that. In fact, my interns are now going through all 133 roles that I have and adding Rocky support where prudent. So yes, I can do Rocky. Will I use Rocky as my base image for EEs? Yeah, maybe. I don't know yet. Again, I just really got into Rocky about, I don't know, 3 months ago, but it's working. It's great.
Okay. Anybody else on chat? Can't hear me.
Anybody else on chat have any questions? Put them in the chat or speak up.
Do you think that moving back from, or you're working more with a binary as opposed to directly with source code when you're using these containers, that's going to just lead to people selling more and more containers and removing ourselves from
Well,
hands in the source code.
I mean, but that's any binary, right? I mean, Vim, right? I mean, we all love the editor. I don't know how many people looked at the source. It's out there somewhere, but I don't go looking at it. But it is out there and I could go look at it. Containers the same way. Somebody can give you their container file or Docker file and you can see exactly how it was built, right? And you can chase that back to even the base image. You know the base image it started from or where that one started from. You can chase its lineage back. So long as people are willing to, now if people just give you this sealed up container and say, hey, run it, that's no different than anybody giving you an OVA, a virtual machine, right? And just say, hey, it's my appliance, put it in, virtually plug it in your network, trust me, I mean, I don't like doing that either, but we do it, right? I mean, some places, we work with Nasuni for global file systems. They give us an OVA. Hey, put them in VMware, turn them on, fill out the thing. I don't think just because it's a container, there is a reason you can't go look at the source and stuff. So it's just a different format of delivery is all. Like I said, a container is nothing more than a a tar GZ under the hood. Really, that's all the image is. And then the running container is obviously a container runtime, typically comprised of, namespaces, control groups, and
SE Linux, right?
no,
You guys turn that off.
I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, do you normally turn SE Linux off with your?
Normally, but SE Linux isn't really going to get too much in the way on containers yet. I mean,
Well, originally, 10 years ago, when I was talking about it. Yeah, namespaces, control groups, and SE Linux was a major component.
I don't think SE Linux is required for successful containerization. Obviously, it's a good practice to at least put it on, auditing or something like that, tell you if it finds things. Putting it on enforcing can obviously make for a bad day.
We're running containers just fine.
Sure. But, if you go cloud native, right, truly cloud native, AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services, GKS, Google Kubernetes, I mean, who knows if they're running SE Linux under the hood? You don't give a shit. You just told it, I want a cluster of this size, give it to me. And now I'm going to run my containers on it. And I'm going to do my security at a different layer now. I'm going to do it in the container layer, right? I'm going to use, I can't remember, Twist Lock used to be the name of it. It's called Prisma Cloud now. I'm going to scan all my container images for vulnerabilities and things like that. I'm going to make sure that this Kubernetes control plane and other things are locked down to my liking. I don't know if there's a STIG for KH yet or not, but I'm sure there is. There's things like that. So, oh yeah. So.
What was that, Dave?
I said, if there is, I'm going to end up having to run it next time.
So that's kind of obviously if you build it all yourself, which I'm a proponent of. So I have my own on-prem machines with my own Kubernetes installed to run AWX and all these other I can go all the way down to, ISOs and source, right, for most things, but I guess it's a warm blanket at night, but I don't have time to do all that, review of all that stuff that critically all day, every day. It's such a fast moving target, right?
Another question was, do you use Ansible to control K8s?
Yes. For several aspects. My Kubernetes clusters that I build are, so if you've ever gone to the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, they have certified distributions of Kubernetes like K8s, K3s, K0s, Minikube. They also have certified installers. One of the installers, the one I use, is called Kube Spray. And if you ever go download Kube Spray, it is a playbook. That's what it is. So yeah, I use my Linux provisioning process in Ansible that I wrote to make the machines and make them of the right size and the storage. And then I run Kube Spray against them, and that lays me down a nice vanilla K8s cluster ready to go and receive workloads. So yeah, now do I use Ansible to operate it daily, day to day, like do deployments and roll them back and things like that? Not yet. Someday.
I have a question. I share this question that Bruce just sent in. It said, any concerns with VMware's future?
Broadcom. Oh yeah, we're already, well, you're doing Proxmox here, right?
I use Proxmox in my lab and we're
Yeah.
going to talk about it next month.
Am I concerned? Maybe. The big thing they're gonna go to is perpetual to subscription-based licensing. We all know that's gonna happen. And perpetual isn't really perpetual. I mean, Jesus, you still revisit them and give them money every 3 years. So, am I worried about it? It's not my check to write. It's Kiewit's check to write. If they start squeezing us too hard, I guess we'll look at Hyper-V or KVM or, OpenStack or something. I don't know. We're a VMware shop too, just like we are an Azure shop or a Microsoft. We are a VMware shop. We use the crap out of it, but we don't use, actually, we've pared it back quite a bit, much to our salesman's chagrin. We don't do VROPS anymore. We don't even use VMware DRS. We use other stuff to do that stuff. So yeah, we pared back a lot, but am I concerned? I'm concerned insofar as that, yeah, I'm gonna have to rewrite some code and stuff and do some things, but no, not really.
Okay. All right. Oh, Bruce said XCP-NG.
XCPNG, yeah. Yeah, I just saw Lawrence Systems did a comparison between that and Proxmox today. XCPNG with XO, the Zen orchestrator, looks pretty good. It looks neat. Yeah.
It has backups built in, so that saves a lot of time and money.
Mhm.
To build it from source is free.
But the only problem with it is it's ZFS backup isn't a true ZFS back. It's not taking advantage of ZFS snapshots. It's doing
But
other
you
steps.
You can make the backup to a ZFS share, right?
I think so. I think you can.
And replicate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ben.
All right. Hey, no problem.
I'm gonna just hop over there real quick.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to have like a face-off contest between Proxmox and XCP-NG.
That's kind of what Lawrence just did on his thing. He didn't do a face-off. He showed the UIs and stuff a little bit. He has his opinions. Everybody has an opinion, but he did admit they will both do, hardware virtualization. That's what it's there for. It's a hypervisor.
Yeah, it's like which one performs better, which one you get up and running better.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. We will be back the first Tuesday in July, which I believe is July 5th, to talk about Proxmox. And thanks for everybody who is watching on the stream tonight. Hopefully I will have the recording up within a day or so. So thanks again, everyone.
Nice talk.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
When did you do the previous Ansible talk? This year or is it last?
I've done two of them. My first one was AWX, all about that. And my second